these, Darren pulled these off, I don't know, over Christmas, after Christmas, so straight after Christmas. And now that these cars are getting as old as they are, so this one's like 40 odd years old, I find that we need to remove the skins because they're all rusty inside, because when the factory put them together they were bare metal, and what happens from there, you'll have to grab this in while I'm talking, is they just start rusting from the inside out. So we remove the skin to overcome that so that they're not bare metal. And now that we're just going to double check to make sure it goes back on, because obviously it's had a little bit of work and a bit of painting. So I just want to double check we can get it back on before we start gluing it up. There we go, just like that. So with the skin, I've given these a file up and straighten them up the best I can. And you'll see on the edges here, if you come in with the camera there mate, you'll see the edge sits up a bit. And the reason for that is it's been obviously pressed over tight. So when we knock it up, but as it goes back down, that'll go back down flat. And I'll put a ruler over it just to make sure. So I've got, 99% of the dents out of it. And I've left it bare metal because when I assemble the door, if I have any drama as I want to work it, then I'll run the file back over it. So I prefer just to seal up the inside. Depending on the level of the build, this is a couple of good strong coats of epoxy. I believe that's enough, but if we're going the whole 9 yards, then we put a coat of 2K in there as well, because we've got to do a little bit of welding. Each one of these is a spot weld that we're going to weld up, and then we're just going to put some urethane sealer on the brace that'll run through the middle so we don't get any rattles. So grab that, Darren. I reckon we can pretty much go ahead. What I might do though is just give the dollies a little tidy up because they're normally pretty ratty. So just normal wear and tear on the dolly. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of different ones, and Darren and I share them. So this has been obviously doing the floor on the sedan or something. It's got a few marks in it. So because I don't want those marks to transfer onto the skin, I'm just going to give it a quick linish up. First of all with some grit, and this is like a fairly tired one. I don't want too much grit on it. And then I'm going to throw a Scotch-Brite on, and then that'll tidy it up and you'll see what happens. So that's with the paper. Just got to watch my back today, it's not real good today. So we've got a different range of Scotch-Brites. This is probably one of the coarsest ones we use. Okay, so the reason I've done that is I don't want to transfer any marks onto the skin, and I'm going to use this particular shape on the reverse curve on the bottom of the door. So a couple of minutes on there could save me 10 or 20 minutes when I get the skin finished, and then find that I've actually left a whole lot of little marks in the skin itself. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just going to run a bead of sealer along here. I like to use a sealer rather than an adhesive. I find that if you use an adhesive, when it dries it wants to pull, and when that pulls it'll tend to leave a mark in the outside of the panel. So I use a sealer. Once this has got through a process and it's dried, because we don't do everything the same day, then things get a chance to dry. Sometimes with sealers and adhesives, when they go in the booth and get baked, that's when they want to pull and all the body work's already done. So if you're going to use something like this, just make sure it's fully cured before you actually do your outside body work. Righto, so we'll throw it on. There you go. Yep. So when it gets a bit tight, if you just get something like a scraper to get in there to prise that open, because we try not to bend that back too far, but you've obviously got to have it back 90 degrees to get it out. Okay, so that's pretty good. And if you look over here, down through there, you'll see we've actually cut this to relieve the top rather than trying to take all those spots out. We run it cut through there and we can weld that up and grind it back up again. You really just got to make sure as it goes back on that this frame and the skin, there's nothing between. It's not just holding up on an old spot weld or something, because once you start laying it back over, the last thing you want to have to do is pull it off again, because you only get away with doing this so many times. So I'm just trying to get all the corners in, make sure I can be comfortable, and then Darren and I will both go along with the hammers and knock it up. At me using a hammer that probably belongs to a mechanic rather than a panel beater. I've actually ran that over a file over that and got it nice and flat and radiused all the edge, so it's like a panel beater's hammer with a bit more weight behind it. So that's what's going on there. There's a bit of history in that one actually. That come out of my dad's Sidchrome set, so it's funny all the hammers seem to have a little bit of history and remind you of things in the past, but that's where that one come from. One of the tricks with this is to stay fairly patient. You really can't, you can see here I've sort of pushed it all the way down but not there, but ideally once you've got it down you just work backwards and forwards and don't try and force it all at once, just do it nice and gently, and it should all go back where it come from. See how that's bouncing now? Like I thought I'd go to the square faced hammer, give me a bit more room, but it's just bouncing off, it hasn't got enough weight. I think we're on everywhere now, so now I'm just going to go around between the pair of us, probably take us another 15-20 minutes, we'll get all that up, we'll come back and show you the next bit. So if you can, this is what you want to try to avoid. See where I've mishit there? I've bounced off something and hit that back edge. If you hit that too much, then you're going to end up with a whole lot of dents along that nice edge there. So you really got to take your time, try not to bounce off and hit there, because if you hit that with one good hit, what I'm hitting here, you're going to end up with dents. You then got to bog them up and more work. Pretty much all over, and I'm going to do that all the way around there. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put a straight edge on the other side to see how that lip's looking before I dress that down really flat, because it's probably just got another 5% to go, but I don't want to overwork the metal until I can actually check how the other side's looking. Once I've got that right, I'll come back and give it the final hammer job. So sometimes stuff gets in the way and you can't get a hammer in there very nicely. So this is just a bit of flat bar that I've ground up. Obviously been used for a lot of things over the years. And I'm just using that now to get in. And it seems like it's probably a good way to go, but it takes two people then rather than one, rather than just a hammer. So I've just got Darren holding the dolly. But if you scan in there, you'll see it, because it's a narrow surface, it also leaves marks. So if you just scan and have a look there, you'll see what I'm talking about. So see how it's got the marks there? So when that's going in, if it's not quite wide enough, it's going to actually leave a mark. So you just got to be conscious all the time what you're doing. Okay, you can see in there where it's forced that urethane out. So we've obviously got a bit of weight on there as well, but like I say, being a sealer, that should just hold that and stop it rattling and help to reinforce the door. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to check how we went for straightness. So that's clearly what we'd love to see all the way along. But as you can see there, this edge here is a bit high and that's causing the low there. And then it's back to good there. So we just got to get that edge to come down a bit, and I'm going to have a play with it. I'm not sure exactly what I need to do, but we need to get that all correct before we actually do the spot welds and weld them back on. We can see on this edge here just how that was sitting up before, where now it's actually gone down and we haven't finished dressing it yet. One of the things I love about a coupe is the shape of them and how much they curve. So through the doors aren't flat, they're a long way from it. So as they come along, they actually curve up. In the door itself, it's got quite a curve in it, but on this bottom edge it's straight. So a lot of people make the mistake, they'll fill that up with bog because they think it's not straight, but that's how they were from the factory. And the reason for that is that then goes into the curve of the quarter panel. So with a coupe door, they're pretty much flat through the start here, which it goes into the guard, and then it curves back in almost like the Mustang, you know, the 68 Mustang that has that curve, and then it comes in and comes back out a bit. So obviously this is a little bit pronounced, so I've got to pull this down. But if you look through there, how flat that is, right, and then it comes in and opens up, and that's how it's meant to be. So what we need to do is, when the quarter's on here, is get this transition across here so we don't end up with the two panels going into a point, and that's where you lose your body straightness. So we need to make sure we've got this right before we weld it up and put it on the car and then go to match it up. Sometimes I may even leave it off, not weld it until we've matched it up. Okay, so we're probably a bit over halfway through the process here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a couple of spot welds here and a weld up that end. That pretty much secures the skin on. But we're not going to do the spot welds around the sides until such time as I get the door back on the car, because I want to make sure it might want to twist, a bit of a push and pull to get those gaps like everyone likes them. And then we'll be able to show you that next time. So we're just going to clean these out so that they weld properly. Okay, so Darren's just done a couple of plug welds there. A couple of points, just make sure it's as clean as you can make it. So because we've got all this epoxy, this is PPG Vibrance epoxy, which we find we can weld around really well and it doesn't play up too much. So you've got to make it clean firstly, make sure it's nice and tight with your clamp, and then get plenty of penetration, but don't blow a hole obviously, and leave enough to grind off so you can make a nice clean job.